Hi, I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. Today, I'm thinking about two particular giants in the broadcast television industry. One of them I had the great privilege of meeting and hosting when he spoke at an organization I was affiliated with. That's Charles Kuralt. Many of us remember Charles Kuralt because of his true down-home style where he interviewed ordinary people all across America, very much like Paul Harvey did on radio. Well, one thing that I particularly want to point out about Charles Kuralt was that he was a true disciple, as many in the broadcast industry were, a true disciple of Edward R. Murrow. Edward R. Murrow became very prominent during the early days of television, especially because he was a foreign correspondent in World War II. And almost every evening, Americans would cut on the radio to hear Edward R. Murrow begin his presentation, his report, often with this statement: "This is London." Edward R. Murrow became beloved not only for his broadcasting, but for his fight for true freedom of thought in America. Edward R. Murrow loved to mentor Charles Kuralt and other fledgling broadcasters. And here's what Charles Kuralt wrote about their way of getting together. He said that after work seminars, Edward Murrow used to conduct in Colby's Bar on 52nd Street back in New York, taught him, that is Kuralt, and the other broadcasters so much. And one statement I want to select now. Edward R. Murrow told these broadcasters, just remember that even though you have a loud voice, even though your voice may reach 16 million people every time you speak, that doesn't make you any smarter than you were when your voice only reached the end of this bar. Kuralt concludes, those who work in the craft of television news ought to remember Murrow's dictum. I think we need to remember it too. Let's go back to when newspapers were the primary source of our information. There was a saying then, well, it must be true, I read it in the newspaper. Then came radio. Gosh, this has to be a fact. I heard it on radio. Next, television. Well, in every one of those situations, we, the listeners, had a choice as to whether we accepted what was said. Too often, we accepted it because of the vehicle, which to us had great credibility. I see some of the same problem now with the internet. We have so many wonderful avenues now of communicating with each other and doing it at very modest cost, reaching a worldwide audience, the type that Edward R. Murrow was talking about. What we need to remember is that though others are reaching us from their spot, possibly many states and even many countries separated from us, and their voice in that sense is louder than it was when they could only talk to us across a room, that doesn't make them any smarter. So my caution for this week, for those of us who use the internet so regularly, is to recognize that what is there is a vehicle, but what is said on there is not automatically valid just because it's there. We need to keep our critical eye, our critical ear, and our critical thoughts and evaluate because of the merit and the true documentation for what's said. Keep this in mind every time you go to the internet and read what others have posted this week. Thanks very much for being with me. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, helping companies communicate more effectively, which boosts their sales, their customer service, their teamwork, their management, their credibility, and, of course, their profits. And working with individuals, I help leaders become outstanding speakers. Check my website, bizcommunicationguy.com. Give me a call, 678-316-4300. Well, one part of the internet, it's time to shut down now, and that's this Facebook Live message. Again, thanks for being with me. Wishing you a great week.